Alright, here we go. Alright, sorry guys, I'm still finishing up my breakfast. So we'll start in a bit. Just a little bit. Alright. Alright, let's start. I'm done with breakfast. Let's go. Can't wait for a PowerPoint version. I don't think I'm gonna make PowerPoint version anymore. Because I think we have gotten to the point where like our ships are way too strong. So like right now, Azure Lane is kinda at a weird place, right? We have so many strong ships. And we have them for like every situation, obviously. So yeah, you can kind of play however you want. Like even using a weak ship isn't that big of a deal anymore. If you have like ultra rares to carry your fleet. Like nothing in the game is really that difficult, so yeah. I think from now on I'm gonna make ship reviews like this. I don't know how it's gonna go. Maybe I'll go back to what I was doing before, but we'll see. Anyways, it's basically the same thing, right? So this is how I make my ship reviews. I have a spreadsheet. So I can input all the data into the spreadsheet. And it will calculate what I need. And then I'll follow up with some actual tests in the game to see if the actual accuracy of the weapons hold up and how much the ship actually performs. Because some of the ship's skills are pretty hard to quantify in terms of numbers, but not this time. The Ryza ships are kind of complicated, but they are pretty straightforward. They don't have like any mechanics that are overly convoluted. Yeah, I'm gonna save the stream no matter what. No, don't worry about it. The new gear in Gear Lab? What do you mean, the new anti-air gun? I mean, the anti-air gun is strong. It's like, it has the best DPS for now, but I mean, do we really need a stronger anti-air gun? Not really. Did you buy the skins? I did. Alright. Anyways. So let's actually let's start with the ship review. Let me pull this one out a bit. Wait. Alright. Go down. Actually, let's just turn her off. They're okay, the new guns. I don't think they make that much impact on the game though. Obviously the best thing is the new anti-air gun. It is monstrous compared to like previous anti-air guns. Like they're like almost 20% better. But even without the rainbow anti-air gun, if you have like a proper fleet of anti-air ships, you can easily like completely wipe out enemy aircrafts in chapter 13. So it's like an icing on the cake thing. It's great, but you don't really have to get it. Yeah, the items skill only trigger once per battle. They are kind of bad for boss. Yeah, kind of. But yeah, anyways, let's start with Ryza. So Ryza as a... Alright, let me make this bigger. Oh god, why is it not enhancing? Alright, there we go. So Ryza is a light cruiser, right? And her survivability is actually not so great. So this is the, like, here what I calculated. You guys want to see this, the effective HP. This is the absolute best case scenario, alright? So this is with Klaudia healing Ryza constantly in battle, and she also gets support from Kala, which is the other, the large cruiser from the collab. So this is the best, absolutely best case scenario. I also included the damage reduction from the one of the skills. I forgot who, but you take like, I think it was Seri. You take like 10% less damage from the enemy, pretty much, if they are item marked. So this is the best case scenario, and Ryza's effective HP is around 21k, which is not great. If we don't factor in all these buffs from the other collab ships and all the healing, her effective HP is around 14k, which is actually pretty bad. 14k is, I say, she's survivable in bosses if you put her in the middle position. But 14k, if you put her on the left or right position, is most likely gonna die. So her survivability is not great. And obviously this ship, because of how her skills work, she is more meant for mob fleet. So I think boss survivability doesn't concern her that much. So Ryza's a pretty extreme ship. Like she's probably the most extreme ship in the in the collab. What we consider good EHP? So for tanks, you want at least 25k or above. 25 without healing. Like this is with healing, right? I have a 48% heal here, which is all the heal from Klaudia plus Kala. The thing about all the Ryza collab ships is that they have like some inter-synergy with mainly Kala and Klaudia. These two provide a lot of healing. So that kind of bolsters their effective HP up. But if you use them solo, they kind of suck. At least for boss fights. For mob fleet, they're okay. For mob fleet, like any ship with 15k effective HP is okay. Like mobs don't do that much damage usually. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend putting Ryza in the boss fleet. Even with full Ryza fleet, like she's still considered fairly squishy. Like 21k effective HP is still pretty squishy in late game bosses. But in Operation Siren, they're okay. Operation Siren enemies like really don't do that much damage, and if you kill them fast, they do like no damage, so it is fine. Like generally speaking, with what we have right now, we can kill the enemies pretty fast. So almost mob situations, like fighting mobs in Operation Siren, or like Chapter 13, Chapter 14 mobs, they don't do that much damage to you. So even very weak ships can survive, is my point. Rika better than Ryza? Not really. I mean, Ryza is different. We'll see when we go down to the damage section. So I think let's go down to. All right, let's talk about the loadout first. So this is the loadout I used on Ryza and did my calculation based on this loadout. Ryza pretty much needs all her items, all the 4 bomb items from the collab. That is because her first skill triggers on item cast, and all the items only gets used once per battle. So if you don't use these items, her skills just don't work. So this is pretty much her only loadout. The lightning bomb I think acts as a torpedo, and this thing is a anti-air gun, and the other 2 are survivability gear. They also do a little bit of damage, but we'll get to that when we get to the damage section. So yeah, scrolling down here, we have the damage calculation. And I'm gonna spare you guys all the details here, because the damage calculation is always pretty messy, but the key to look at here is the DPS. So I usually calculate damage based on 2 situations. In 60-second fights, which is what we usually have for mobs, late game mobs, like fights usually ends in around 60 seconds. And then for 90-second fight, which is your average boss fight situation. And what's interesting about Ryza is that because her skill only activates when she uses the item, and she has 4 items, she uses all 4 items in the first 40-second fight of the fight. So after 40 seconds, she basically have only her stats buffing skill and nothing else. So this is very extreme. Oh, hold on, let me pull this up. Here. Alright. So when Ryza uses the item, she's gonna use her first skill, which is called Shining Blast or whatever. Why did my music stop? Okay. So the Shining Blast does a buttload of AoE damage. Let me see what's the exact number. So Shining Blast does 960 base damage in a pretty large AoE. It also has humanoid lock-on, but it has a pretty large spread. And Ryza can use Shining Blast up to 5 times, usually 4. If you have Klaudia, she uses it 5 times. But 4 times of 960 base damage is insane for a light cruiser, for a Vanguard even. So she outputs a buttload of damage, like right at the start of fight, like in the first 40 seconds of the fight. But after the 40 seconds, she kind of falls off, and she doesn't use any skills after that. So this Shining Blast skill is insane at clearing mobs. Like you can probably see that. If you ever use Ryza in combat with like any other ships, you'll probably find her taking the MVP most of the fights against mobs. That is because her DPS in the first 40 seconds is like absolutely crazy. Like here I have like the DPS in 60 and 90, but if we put in 40 seconds, her DPS is like 1500, which is almost a battleship tier. Definitely the highest DPS Vanguard if we just talking about short fights, but her DPS really fall off in the long fights. In 90 seconds, her average DPS is about 900, which is still very good, but not really close to a top tier Vanguard. A top tier Vanguard right now does about 1100 DPS in a long fight. Ryza's at 900, so still pretty respectable, but her actual DPS does fall off really hard after 40 seconds. So ideally, you want to use Ryza in short fights, where you can finish the fight in the first 40 seconds. That is pretty much her gimmick. And let me show her other skill, one sec. So this is her third skill, which is, you get this after enhancing her gear, her special augment gear to level 10. So she fires a laser every 2 times you use Shining Blast. So the laser is gonna go off 2 times. The laser is actually pretty strong. It does a lot of damage. Let's see. The base damage for the laser is 700. Oh my god, the bots. Yeah, the laser does 700 base damage, so really strong. And it has all the properties of the laser, like infinite piercing, goes through shield. So just from these 2 skills, we can see that Ryza is really good. Really good at clearing mobs. Like, if there are many enemies on the screen, she's absolutely gonna shred them. And let's go to the last one of Ryza's skill. So if you equip all 4 of Ryza's item, she will use the core drive at I think 45 seconds. 40 or 45, I forgot. Let me check. Oh, 30 seconds, yeah. So she'll use the core drive at 30 seconds. The core drive is a large explosion. The actual explosion radius is actually bigger than the pixel shown on screen. It hits a large area. You can see it hits like 3 enemies here. And this core drive actually does a lot of damage. It does a few thousand damage. So you really want to use all 4 of her items. But after the core drive, Ryza is not gonna use any more items, so her Shining Blast won't activate. So her lasers won't activate. So she pretty much only have her main gun and torpedo. So after that, she's your average light cruiser. But yeah, this is pretty much Ryza's gimmick. So my overall rating for Ryza is that she is extremely good in short fights, especially in like Operation Siren and stuff. Like she's basically a preload light cruiser. Most of her damage is focused in the first 40 seconds, and she is the highest. She has the highest damage output in all vanguards in short fights. Like if you use her in actual battle, you'll probably find her taking MVP most of the fights. But if we average out in the long run, her DPS in first 60 seconds is around 1.1k, so still really good, it's top tier. Falls off in 90 seconds to around 900, which is around lower level of tier 1 at this point. Overall, really good. And her skills are really flashy. And one thing to note is that Ryza has a... Well, she makes the item marked enemies take 10% more damage from Atelier Ryza ships. So she basically gives her entire faction a pretty big damage boost. So if you want to run Ryza fleet, then obviously you have to get Ryza. That's what she's there for. Oh no, her skill doesn't trigger off other items, no. It's only the items she carries, so these 4. She'll use these 4 items in sequence. She tossed one at 10 seconds, then 15, 20, and 25, I think. And then finish off with the core drive at 30 seconds. Yeah, Ryza's gonna take MVP most of the fights against mobs. So yeah, that is pretty much Ryza. And let's go to Kala next then. So Kala is the first super rare large cruiser, and she is pretty freaking good. So her HP is actually not that high, but because of all the buffs she gets from the other artillery ships, she can be pretty tanky. So under the best circumstance, like with all the healings from Klaudia, Kala can reach about 40k effective HP with the armor plate boosting her armor to heavy. 40k HP is already really tanky. That's like close to Aegir. But the main thing is that obviously she will have to have her teammates with her. So if you take all that out, she is not really... Well, she's still pretty tanky. She'll still have like around 30k effective HP. A little bit less than that if she have like no teammates. But that is still good enough to be a main tank in late game boss fights. If you have like around 30k effective HP, that is the point where they will generally survive until the end. Oh yeah, I also put the wrong picture here. Her auxiliary gun I tested with is the single 150mm, yeah. Because her skill requires the auxiliary gun to trigger, and using a fast firing gun is a bit more beneficial. So yeah, this is the wrong gun. I put in the wrong picture. This is the wrong gun. Maybe I should put in... Alright, hold up. Alright, hold up. Let me switch this one out. One sec. No, not this one. Alright, you guys can look at Sirius for a bit while I switch out. While I switch in the right gun. Alright, where is it? Alright, done. So this is the right gun you should use on Kala. But yeah, overall I think Kala is still a good enough tank. She is not as tanky as Aegea or Berest. About the same as Azuma actually, if you have like Klaudia with her. A bit more tanky than Azuma actually. But overall I think she's definitely, one of the best tank you can get as a new player. She's basically a PR ship. Let's leave it at that. She is a bit more tanky than most of the PR heavy cruisers, which is great. And she also has a, if you enhance her hammer, her augment gear to level 10, she also has a low HP heal and she has 50% to not die when taking fatal damage. If she procs that, then yeah, she's basically Aegea tier, but it only happens 50% of the time. So not the best. Why that instead of the gold one? Because her first skill fires a barrage every 6 times her auxiliary gun is fired. And her auxiliary gun efficiency, I think is only, let me see, 45%. So using a high damage auxiliary gun doesn't really matter on her. It's better to use a fast firing auxiliary gun to trigger more barrage. Let's see. So using a low damage auxiliary gun, her auxiliary gun DPS is only 38, so not so great. Even with a high damage auxiliary gun, her DPS is gonna be like 60, I think. Let me put in and see. So what is it? It's like 24 times 3, right? So like 72. And it will be like 2.5. Well, 24. Yeah, so DPS went up to about 60 by using a high damage auxiliary gun. But you lose out on a lot of barrages. Like, we can see her barrage does a lot of damage. It's like 300 DPS on the first skill barrage. So, obviously, we should be using the faster gun. Oh, let's just... Yeah, so obviously using a faster gun is better. It also triggers her first skill more, which is gonna provide a small damage buff to Ryza if you use them together. But yeah, Kala's DPS is pretty much as you expected from a tank. About 800, which is okay. Slightly higher than Ron. But again, she's not gonna be out DPSing most ships. I mean, she's a tank. I think the biggest highlight for Kala is that her second skill provides a pretty strong heal. Like her second skill, if you put her at the left position, she's gonna heal the ships. She's gonna heal the ship in the right position of the Vanguard for 5% every like 12 seconds. I think it's 12. Oh, let me check. Yeah, it's 12. So she's not only tanky herself, she also heals her Vanguard teammates. So she's a team player. Now obviously her barrage is another high point. Let me pull it up. Alright, where is Kala's barrage? So her barrage looks really cool actually. And it doesn't really have any lock on, so it's actually not that accurate. It always fires in this pattern. But I think she has the coolest barrage. Great gun good on Kala? No. If you can use large cruiser gun, it's just better, because large cruiser guns are more accurate, and they also ignore shields. Which if you play chapter 13 and 14, you know there's a lot of enemies with shield. So Drake gun tends to get blocked quite often, and lose out on a lot of DPS. But yeah, Kala's first skill has a really cool barrage. And if you level her augment to max, she also gets a special laser. Let me pull it up. So yeah, she has a vertical laser. I think this is the first one we have in the whole game. It looks really cool, but it's actually garbage, because the laser doesn't move with the enemy. It just stays there and fires. So if the enemy just moves a tiny bit, the laser's gonna miss. But still, I think the vertical laser is ridiculously cool. So I think Kala is like definitely the most flashy ships in this collab. Like the vertical laser is just so cool. But it's really bad. It misses most of the time. So here I gave the laser only a 25% accuracy rating. In actuality, I should give it a 15%, I'll be honest. Because most enemies in this game do move, and the laser is fixed. So you'll be lucky if the laser hits like 3 or 4 times. You never get to trigger the laser? You trigger the laser by... Oh fuck, I forgot. How do I trigger the laser? You trigger the laser by... when the first skill triggers 3 times. So you get like maybe 4 vertical lasers like every 90-second fights. Yeah, I think the laser is just really cool. Definitely worth getting if you want some flashy barrages. So overall, I think Kala is... like calling her tier 1 tank is kind of under, but she's not quite like the top tier tank yet. I think her position as the super rare large cruiser is pretty accurate. Like she's not quite as good as the ultra rare ones. She's pretty much as good as Azuma, I think. Though her damage output is not that desirable in comparison to other large cruisers. Like the best large cruisers are still Aegir and Brest. But Kala, I think she's basically a PR ship. Better than most PR ships. And that is really good for a super rare you can just get. And she's free from the event, so one of the best ships for beginners. The only problem is that you kind of have to get the VH armor plate, so that can be a pain in the ass to get. But overall, very strong ship, but not quite top tier. Don't really have to build her if you already have the ultra rare large cruisers. But as a new player, pretty good, really good actually. Like I think all the artillery Ryza ships are just really good for new players, because most of them are basically PR tier, and you don't need to get the blueprints. And they have inter synergies together, so you put them together, you have a strong fleet right off the bat. No, Kronstadt is better than Brest for the most part. Alright, let's go to Lilla next. So Lilla is the elite heavy cruiser, and she is a lot better than I thought. Like, most elite heavy cruisers are actually terrible in this game. But overall, she's actually quite good, I have to say. The only problem with Lilla is that she is extremely squishy. Like, with like all the buffs together, she barely breaks 20k effective HP, and that's with like all the healings she gets from Klaudia. So without a healer, her effective HP is like around 12k, which is pathetic for a heavy cruiser. That's basically paper. But I mean, she's basically the glass cannon. Let's not talk about her effective HP. Her survivability is pretty disappointing, to say the least. But when we scroll down to damage, her damage output is really good. For an elite heavy cruiser, she has over 900 DPS overall. That is really good. Like, the top tier heavy cruiser, large cruiser have around 1000 DPS, a little bit under that. So her DPS level is at least super rare tier. So if you just protect Lilla in the middle position of the Vanguard, she actually hits pretty hard. She hits as hard as a standard super rare. So pretty good actually. Now you're not gonna be feeling bad when using Lilla compared to like other elite heavy cruisers. And obviously, Lilla also has some really cool barrages. Let me pull them up real quick. Right, so Lilla has the her first skill throws out a slash with infinite piercing, I think, and then her Fatal Drive, which is her skill 3 upgrade from the augment, if you level the augment to level 10, is I think the first, I don't know how do you call this barrage. I don't think we ever have one of these in Azure Lane. Like, she disappears and do some area slashes. She can still get hit when she disappears though, so she's not invulnerable during that. And what is it called? The Fatal Drive is actually, it has a pretty large AoE. It has a large spread. It's like an Omni Slash, yeah. Will I make a shorter video for this? No. I'll just put the live version up there. I wanted to make like a concise video, around 10 minutes, but I got COVID and I think it's a bit too late for the ship reviews, so let's just do it live. I want to explain how I do the ship reviews anyways. I think this is a better idea. But yeah, Lilla has some really flashy barrages. Like, her actual DPS when you fight mobs is quite good because everything she has is piercing. Like the Fatal Drive from skill 3 and her skill 1 both have piercing. So against a lot of mobs, her DPS is really good actually. Like, definitely better than some of the older PR ships. And she's an elite. So I think the only problem with Lilla is that she's just really squishy. That's kind of problematic. But if you put her in the middle and have some healer, it's okay. I think overall, I think Lilla is, I'd say, the strongest elite heavy cruiser we have at the moment. Like, before we have, she's very similar to Wichita, which has very low effective HP but also high DPS. Kind of similar concept. Basically glass cannon. Needs protection. I talked about Kala like just now. If you rewind the stream a bit, you can hear my thoughts on Kala. But I'll talk about Kala again, I guess. Just briefly. So Kala, I think, very good tank. High effective HP, especially if you use her with the other Atelier Ryza ships. But overall, not as good as the ultra rare large cruisers. That's as expected. And Kala has decent DPS, about 800. Not bad for a tank. So I think she's a very strong ship for beginners, but we have better ships in the late game. Now, Portland is kind of out of the meta. Portland's still tanky, but Portland's DPS is like 500. And Lilla is like 900 DPS. So, yeah. I think Lilla's actually pretty good. If you just want a hard-hitting heavy cruiser, she's quite good. I'll say that. A lot better than I expected. I expect Lilla to be absolutely terrible. Because she is a torpedo heavy cruiser. Kinda bad, but she's good. Surprisingly. Alright, next one, let's go for Patricia, or Patty. My favorite from the collab. And for battleships, I usually put two different categories. One is for mob and one is for boss. But yeah, before we go to Patricia, I think first we need to check out her barrage. I think that's the main thing about her that really stands out. Where is it? Here. So when she fires her main gun, she fires these fiery slashes. And these slashes are guaranteed to crit. And not only that, they heal Patty for 5% of the damage dealt. And because these slashes are really big, they can hit multiple targets. Usually they'll hit around 2, but sometimes they can hit 3 or 4. The slashes are crazy in Mob Fleet, because in Mob Fleet you can pretty consistently hit more than 2 enemies. And against late game mobs, every hit on this barrage heals her for about 100 HP each slash on each enemy. So every barrage is gonna heal her a few hundred HP. That is absolutely busted. So here I have like on average every fight against mobs, she can heal anywhere between like 2000 to 3000 HP if there are a lot of enemies on the screen. And it depends on how fast you clear the enemies, obviously. But if you use her alone, she can heal a lot. And that is actually kind of problematic, because Patty has a skill that makes her do more damage with less HP she has. She can do up to 20% more damage with when she's low HP. But she never gets low HP because she heals so much. So her damage buff from her second skill almost never triggers. It's a slight problem. For Ryza fleet can do chapter 14. You can do it easily on manual, but not on auto. On auto it's still pretty tough. I actually tested Patty on chapter 14. The problem with Patty is that while she's really tanky, she like never dies. Her teammates sometimes dies. So if you're unlucky and the charging ships and the suicide ships hits her teammates, it's kind of problematic. But Patty herself, like, actually just doesn't, like, she's pretty much full HP after like 5-6 fights against Chapter 14 mobs. Yeah, the Slash Barrage has like a crazy high lifesteal. It lifesteals 5% off of every enemy hit. And because the Slash is guaranteed to crit, it does like a lot of damage. And let's look at the other barrage from Patty. Oh, where did I put it? Oh, the other barrage is like basically the same. So this is the item barrage from if you equip these two gear. If you equip these two gear, it will summon a tiny looking meteor that actually hits a really large area. You can see the meteor is tiny, it's like super small, but it actually hits 4 enemies, right? And the AoE from this thing is actually really big. It's kind of crazy. Recall what effective HP is? Effective HP is just her HP with everything accounted, like armor type, evasion rate, damage reduction, healing. You can see here, right? I have healing, and then fix heal, repair 2 heal, low HP heal, damage reduction, resistance, and then armor mod. So effective HP counts for everything. It's basically a number that shows how tanky a ship actually is. But yeah, the meteor from the item is actually pretty big. It does quite a lot of damage. Like against late game enemies, it does like a few thousand, like 4,000, 5,000. So pretty good. So against mobs, I think you definitely want to use the special items. But against boss fight, if you use her in boss fight, the standard loadout with the fire control radar and white shell is better. But I think the most standout thing for Patty is just her crazy heal. Like, she is, I think, the most tanky battleship by far against mobs. Like, she can easily heal like 5,000-6,000 HP in the course of 6 fights. So looking at effective HP here is kind of pointless. Because this is more like single fight, but you know, it kind of depends on how much healing she gets, which is kind of random, hard to quantify. But yeah, basically she's unkillable. And her damage output against mobs is pretty good. So about 2,000, 1,900 in 60-second fights. In 90-second fight, it kind of falls off a little bit. But that's because the model I'm using. So in 90-second fights, she only fires 4 shots. In 60, she fires 3. So the DPS looks a bit off on the 90 seconds. Yeah, and that's with Champagne Gun, yes. The reason why I choose Champagne Gun is just because her mob clearing ability is already good. She lacks single target. So using a triple gun on her is overall a bit better. And the Ryza fleet is already really good at clearing trash mobs. You don't need a faster firing gun. You need a harder hitting gun to kill the elites. 457 isn't that good in chapter 14 because of the misses with the night battle system. Like the shells can easily miss. So double gun tend to perform a little bit worse in my experience. Yeah, the Georgia gun. I recommend using triple gun on her, either the Champagne gun or the Rainbow Triple 457. No, not 457, like 4. Fuck, I forgot the caliber. The rainbow triple gun, you guys know what I mean. Yeah, 406, yeah. The rainbow 406. So it's roughly the same. It depends on what kind of enemies you're facing. I recommend using the champagne gun because in chapter 14 there's quite a lot of medium and heavy armor enemies. Especially the heavy armor battleships. They do a lot of damage. You want to kill them ASAP. So champagne gun is better. No, not the 460. No, not that one. Don't use that gun. So yeah, her DPS against mobs is pretty good, around 2000, which is what I consider to be a good mob clear. 2000 is like the benchmark for a good ship at clearing mobs. Oh, there are 2 rainbow guns, right? Oh, there are 3. Yeah, the Mark 7. Fuck, I forgot what is it called. Hold up. I don't remember what the name of the gun is though. I'm checking it right now. Yeah, the triple 406 MK7. That's the one I'm talking about. Not the triple 460. No, don't use the triple 460. That one is terrible. The cooldown's too long. Don't use the Yamato Musashi gun. It's terrible. Izumo gun is roughly the same. Izumo gun is just like a little bit worse than champagne gun. Yeah, let's look at Patricia on boss fight. So against boss fight, her DPS is falling off a little bit. Against medium armor, 1600. That's roughly the same as Warspite Retrovit. The top DPS against bosses are around 2000, like New Jersey and stuff. A little bit over 2000, so Patricia is definitely not a top tier boss fight battleships. But yeah, if you use like a HE gun, then her DPS against light is also gonna be around 1600. But overall, I think Patricia is definitely more suited for mob fleet. I mean, her skill set is definitely leans more towards mobs. And the entire Ryza fleet is more geared towards mobs as well. So, definitely a good ship. And I think if you don't build FDG for chapter 14, Patricia is pretty much your best replacement at the moment. Like outside of PR ships, obviously. Like, I don't think there's any other non-PR battleships that performs as well as Patricia on chapter 14. The only problem with Patricia is just that she can't really protect her teammates all that well. But if you have backline healers like Klaudia and Perseus, it's kind of okay. Okay, you also use Volga, so that's pretty much your best chapter 14 build if you don't have FDG. You can also use Musashi on mob fleet, yes, but Musashi goes into boss fleet, right? Oh, she's way better than Monarch. Monarch is a little bit outdated. Patty's kind of similar to Monarch actually. They both have a frontal barrage that has good AoE. And they both have self-healing. It's just that Patricia's healing is just a lot better. So much better, actually. It's insane. A Monarch, maybe you get like 1k heal out of the skill. Patricia can heal like 6000 across an entire sortie. But yeah, like I said, I think Patricia is the most standout ship in this collab. I think she's the best ship out of this collab, pretty much. Just because how she performs in chapter 13 and 14. Just overall a very solid mobbing battleship. With really good survivability. And clears mobs okay. Good enough to be a top contender. Not that good against bosses, but still decent. Basically a worst by level. Like a bottom of tier 1, I'd say. Not top tier though. Alright, and the last one, Klaudia. So Klaudia is also extremely good. So she is a light carrier, but for some reason her stats are really high. If we look at her aviation, it's over 400, which is basically a standard carrier level. I like about 30 lower than the standard carrier. And she has ridiculously high reload. She has over 200 reload with the stats buff from her bow. If you have max tech like me, you're gonna have like almost 250 reload. So her airstrike is really fast. And her damage output is not even bad either. Klaudia actually only has 7 aircrafts. She has 3 fighters and 4 torpedo bombers. So in this area, she's slightly worse than the standard carrier. Standard carriers usually have 8 aircrafts. She only has 7. But her damage output is still good enough because her barrage is also really strong. Her effective HP, we don't really have to look at it, but it's pretty squishy. Pretty much your standard light carrier survivability. Nothing too special. On the squishy side, so she can easily die in chapter 14. You kind of have to protect her from the charging ships and stuff. And now let's look at her damage. Her DPS is about 1000 across the board. She doesn't have any skill that falls off with time. Her skills are always gonna trigger, so her DPS is pretty stable. 1000 DPS is like slightly higher than Unicorn Retrofit, but her healing is worse than Unicorn. But she heals 2% more on Atelier Ryza ships, so every airstrike she heals Vanguard for 5%, and 2% more for Atelier Ryza ships. And because her special gear, I think this one is called the Elixir, I forgot what this one is called. If you use these two together, you get a 5% shield at the start. And then I think it's the Elixir that also heals 5% for all Atelier Ryza ship at 50 seconds. So she has a lot of healings. She doesn't have preload, but she has a lot of heals for Atelier Ryza ships. And her damage output is quite good. Yeah, she pretty much is only missing a preload, so she pairs really well with Perseus. Like Perseus doesn't have any follow-up damage, but she has strong preload. And Perseus also has really good backline healing, which Klaudia kinda lacks. So these two are pretty good combo. And let's look at Klaudia's barrage, which is also one of her strong suits. Where is that? So Klaudia's barrage is really good. Like every 10 seconds you get this huge ice explosions. And then if you max out her bow, she also fires this meteor, which looks tiny but also has huge AoE. Like the meteor from her skill 3 upgrade is actually huge. Yeah, and her first skill barrage is also huge. So again, Klaudia is also really good at clearing mobs. Like if you use this loadout, you can use a different fighter, but if you use like double Wyvern, She is crazy good at clearing trash mobs. And also, Klaudia is like support for the artillery Ryza ships. Because Ryza ships have this AP mechanic. Like, they need to use their AP to trigger their barrages. And Klaudia provides a lot of AP. She also gives like 10 AP at the start of the battle, so Ryza can trigger an additional Shining Blast. So Klaudia is kind of the support of the gang. And she's basically a top tier healer, though I think I would rate her slightly lower than Volga. But if you use her in Artillery Ryza fleet, then obviously she is really good. I think she pairs really well with Perseus. Definitely a top tier ship in chapter 14. I don't think she works that well with Unicorn Retrofit though, unfortunately. So you can use Unicorn Retrofit for boss fleet. I think that's also okay. Oh, if you don't get the gear, the augment gear, she is only a little worse actually. The augment gear for Klaudia doesn't matter that much. It just adds a meteor and that's pretty much it. Not that much damage loss. But overall, 1000 DPS, a little bit over 1000 actually. Pretty good DPS for a light carrier. And definitely a top tier ship. A top tier healer. And there's one more ship, Seri, but she's an elite carrier. Pretty much performs on how much you expect on an elite carrier. Not super good, so I'm not gonna really review her. It's kind of a waste of time. I'll showcase Seri's barrage here though. Let me see. I think I have it somewhere here. So Seri has this butterfly barrage, kind of like Shinano. And she also provides a small amount of damage reduction for the artillery Ryza ships. But she is definitely the worst of the bunch. She's not really worth using. But yeah, that's pretty much all the artillery Ryza ships. There's like 2 more auxiliary gear. But those 2 are not really worth using. Like, I think they're meant for Lilla because they give torpedo and firepower, but Lilla's already super squishy. If you don't put like any survivability gear, she's gonna die really fast. And the other 2 items doesn't provide that much damage. Yeah, like, you're already keeping the enemy permanently item marked in the first 50 seconds with Ryza plus Patty. So the other 2 gear is not really that useful. Most people don't read. I mean, to be fair though, it's pretty straightforward. The only ship that you need to use special gear is Ryza. You need to use these 4. Patty, you can use these 2, or you can just use standard battleship gear like the fire control radar and the AP shell, the white shell. They're mostly the same, not that much different. So I think that concludes my Artillery Ryza ship review. Like, I wanted to do a like concise video, like a 10-minute version of this. Yeah, the augments are required for the most part, yes. But most ships can run without the augment fine. Like, the augment doesn't provide that much bonus. Like, they're okay. Like, I think the big one is Ryza. Like, the Ryza's augment makes you fire an extra item at the start of the fight. So you can do a Shining Blast at the beginning of the fight. And then you also get the laser, which does a good amount of damage. And for Kala, the augment is also pretty strong. Gives her a way to avoid fatal damage and some low HP heal. Yeah, I have this at plus 12 because I thought it looks cool. And Lilla's augment is really strong. If you want to use Lilla, you definitely want to get her claw to plus 10 because her barrage, her fatal drive is really powerful. But for Patricia, this one isn't too important, and for Klaudia, the bow is also not super important. But they're good to have. Alright, let me see what else do I have. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Right, I think that's the end for the Atelier Ryza ships. Let's do a conclusion at the end. Good replacement for Wyvern. You can use anything really. It doesn't really matter. Like if you want your Klaudia to do more single target, you can use Ryza or the German torpedo bomber. Test the new AA gun. I don't think the AA gun needs any testing. Alright, let's do a conclusion and then wrap the stream up. So Ryza, really strong light cruiser, does a buttload of damage in the first 30-40 seconds of the fight. Almost 1500 DPS if we only count the first 30 seconds. So really high damage at the start of the fight, but falls off in longer fights. Not very tanky. A decent survivability with the other Atelier Ryza ships, but not a tank material. So I say Ryza's somewhere around tier 1, slightly higher than tier 1 I think. But she really excels in shorter fights, like she's like a specialist. Really good in Operation Siren, and really good at clearing mobs, and extremely good at farming events. Like I'm gonna be using Ryza to speed farm events in the future, because I need to do ship reviews. I tend to farm the event really fast, and Ryza just absolutely murders like event maps. Rika or Ryza? I choose Ryza. But yeah, Ryza's just really good. She's a really good farmer, I'd say. Right, next one, Kala. Kala is a really good tank. She is a little bit worse than the ultra rare large cruisers, but better than most PR heavy cruisers as a tank. Really good survivability. She's gonna survive most late game boss fights. DPS wise, above average, 800. Not too bad, but not amazing either. The thing that really stands out about Kala is that she has a healing ability. So kind of like Berest, a little bit worse. Works well with the other Atelier Ryza ships. Really good synergy. Also, her barrage looks really cool. Next one, Lilla. Lilla is really powerful as a damage dealer, but she is a glass cannon. Her survivability is absolutely trash. Even with factoring all the healing from her teammates, it's still not looking good. But if you can keep her alive, she can output some serious damage. Like 900 DPS from an elite heavy cruiser is not bad. She's gonna beat most ships you can get in the early game in terms of damage. You just kind of have to protect her. London tier? No. She does more damage than London. London is like 800 something DPS. So yeah, Lilla pretty good. But you kind of have to get her claw to plus 10, which can be a problem for beginners. But overall, strong ship. Very strong for an elite. Like surprisingly strong. Now Patricia, best ship from this collab. extremely survivable. I think she's the most tanky battleship in the game for now. She has an insane amount of healing from her first skill, and her mob clearing ability is also really good. Large area barrage that procs 100%. Pretty good. DPS against mobs is around 2000, so pretty good. Not top tier, but good enough to clear chapter 13 and 14. Against boss fights, around 1600 DPS, which is around war spy tier. Not terrible. If you use her against boss, you're not gonna feel too bad about it, but definitely not like New Jersey. Just don't expect her to do like 2000 DPS or something. Yeah, her main strength is just her survivability against mobs. She's just really tanky. In most fights, she's not even gonna lose HP. And the last one, Klaudia. Klaudia is a really good healer, but she also does a lot of damage for a healing-like carrier. The main strength is that she heals more for Untitled Ryza ships, but if you use her in like a normal fleet, she's also pretty decent. She has a really large area barrage that triggers very frequently. I think it's like every 10 seconds. So her DPS is gonna be pretty nice, and she's really good at clearing trash mobs, which is really useful because clearing trash mobs allows your battleships to hit the important targets. So she improves your team's effective DPS by a bit. And she heals, so... Well, I guess she's top tier, kind of. Not necessarily like a top tier healer like Unicorn Retrofit or Perseus. I think I rate her about the same as Volga. But because her damage output is quite good, I think maybe she's a little bit better than Volga. The Volga is a bit more tanky. It's hard to say. I think I rate her about the same as Volga. And obviously she performs way better when used in a Untitled Ryza fleet. So if you want to use a pure Ryza fleet, I think the 4 ships you want to use is Ryza, Kala, Patricia, and Klaudia. Now, if you really like Lilla, you can use her in the middle, but there are better ships than Lilla to use. Yeah, I think the thing about Klaudia is just that she just works really well with Perseus. Like she kind of complements Perseus really well, so definitely a plus on that front. And the last ship I didn't review is Seri. She's basically your standard elite carrier. Not too terrible, but not great either. Not really worth using at this point. And I think that sums up my Untitled Ryza ship reviews. What did I say about Rika versus Ryza? They're like kind of different, but I say Ryza is better than Rika. Rika's like a little bit better in chapter 14 though, because chapter 14 fights tend to be very long. And Ryza isn't that good in chapter 14. She's okay, but not great. Alright, I think that's it for today's Azure Lane stream. I guess I'll be here answering some questions. If you guys have any questions, you can ask them right now. Kala's module items mandatory for plus 10. Not really. Yeah, I'm gonna stream the JP live, yes. Oh man, my voice is fading because of my throat is still not doing too well. Lineup for Operation Siren with Ryza ships. In Operation Siren, you just wanna use Ryza. The thing about Operation Siren is that there's a pretty high chance of running into the enemies that turns healing into damage. So Patricia and Klaudia both are not that good. And Ryza can run solo. Ryza's pretty good in Operation Siren, yes. Yeah, I'm gonna review the next Ultra Rare, yes. Yeah, also, what do you guys think about this format? If I do reviews like this, like maybe in a video or a stream, like what do you guys think? I think this way ship review is a bit more engaging with the viewer. Do you guys prefer this or the old format? Great. Yeah, this format is way easier for me because making a video takes like 10 hours. Yeah, I'm gonna timestamp the stream for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I can do a gear review update definitely. Yeah, the old format is simpler, yeah. But this is basically how I come to conclusion with every ships I do. I input the number and then I test them out a bit in the in chapter 14, Operation Siren, and also hard mode 12-4. Those are the 3 areas I mainly test. Sometimes I test them on meta fights, but meta fight is really specific. No, I have not reviewed the PR5 ships because they are kind of boring actually. I'm still kind of pissed about PR5 ships. I'll be totally honest. Yeah, I think I like crunching numbers. I think it's just easier to see with the numbers laid out. You can get a pretty good picture of how strong a ship really is. Like all the PR5 ships are worth to raise. It's just that most of them are just really boring. Like I really like the ship design from the Atelier Ryza ships. They're not like overly complicated, but they have some interesting mechanics. Like you look at PR5 ships like Berest. Like Berest literally have 3 passive skills that just gives her either healing or stats buff. Like they didn't even bother to make a special looking barrage for Berest. Like they can't get any more lazy than that for an ultra rare ship. And Polymorph is also just really boring. She just has really high stats. I think the PR5 ships, I just feel like they just have really high stats and kind of boring design in comparison. This is my problem with a lot of the new Azure Lane ships recently, is that they are good, but they're a little bit too good, and they don't have any restrictions. Like Berest or Polymorph, like they are just ridiculously powerful because they have higher stats. They have more numbers. And they're just better than old ships in almost every area. Whereas, like for example, Ryza. Ryza is a very strong ship if you use her at the right place. Now in shorter fights, Ryza is amazing. But in longer fights, she's not so great. So she's not just powerful in every area. She's good, but not always amazing. Whereas we have too many ships right now in Azure Lane that's just good in every area. Like you have a fleet with like Musashi, New Jersey, UVH, and then Vanguard you have Aegir, Brest, Polymorph. Like Jesus, these ships are way too powerful. You can mow through every content with these fleets. Like they don't even have any inter synergy together. They just have high stats. Their stats are way higher than what's required to beat the stage in Azure lane right now. Yeah, I'd rather have gimmicks. Like that's just my take. Yeah, I agree. Artillery Fleet isn't OP, but they are more fun than meta fleets. I agree with that. And they also have flashy barrages, which I really like. But yeah, I think I'm gonna call it for this stream. I think I'm gonna take a break and maybe stream some Blue Archive after this. So yeah, I'm gonna archive the stream and then I'll put some timestamps in the video description. So yeah, thanks for watching. See you guys later. And goodbye.